Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to convert an API server into an MCP server and secure it with authentication using Descope. We want to do this so that the roots of our API server can be exposed as tools to MCP clients and LLMs. If you have a FastAPI backend API server, the most seamless way to do this is to use the FastAPI MCP library. That's what we're going to be doing in this video. I have an existing Python FastAPI backend, and I'm going to be converting this API into an MCP server and then securing it with authentication. Let me quickly show you what this API server does. It's got two simple routes that perform some image operations. We've got a route that performs optical character recognition and one that scans a barcode. Note that these routes work on public image URLs for now. Let's quickly run it in Postman and see what happens. I've got the URL for an image which has some text in it. This is the image. If I send the request, I get back the text in the image. Similarly, I have another barcode image, and I've copied the URL, and I'm going to run the request. And I get back the data inside the barcode. Now, my goal with this is to be able to ask a natural language question to an LLM or an MCP client that makes use of my tools. For example, I might want to go into Cursor in the chat and ask a question. To perform OCR on the same image, I may want to know about the origin or the background of the text. To do this, we need to launch an MCP server and make sure that our client, Cursor, is connected to the MCP server. So let's work on that now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the FastAPI MCP library using pip. I've already done that. Now in my main Python file, I'm going to import the library. To each of my routes, I'm going to add an operation ID that basically defines the name of the tool. I'm going to add a neat, concise talk string for each of the function. Now this talk string allows the MCP client to appropriately select the tool for a given query. I'm going to do that for my second tool as well. And finally, I'm just going to write about 5 lines to initialize the MCP server. Now we have a setup that launches both an API server and an MCP server. So let's quickly run it. Now let's try to connect our client Cursor to this MCP server. I'm going to go into Cursor settings, tools and integrations, and I've already set up in the mcp.json file the URL localhost 8000 in which my server is running /mcp, the URL for my MCP server. And let's try to connect. As you can see, we've got two tools enabled now, OCR and scan barcode. So now we can actually go ahead and run this query. As you can see, it's called the correct tool, the OCR tool, and it's able to give me a background of the text inside the image. The next thing I want to do is to secure my server with authentication. Ideally, users would have to authenticate before being able to access my tools. Now, to secure our MCP server with authentication, I'm going to be using the code in our Descope FastAPI sample app. This app contains some code which shows you how to add a custom JOT access token validator to your Python FastAPI backend. I'm going to be copying all the files inside app directory, except for main, into my application under the auth directory. I'm also going to set up an environment variable file, similar to this example file, in which I add my Descope project ID. Next, I'm going to go to the Descope console under Inbound Apps, and I'm going to make sure that dynamic client registration is set to active. You can also make sure that you select the appropriate flow here for your login, which should be based on the Inbound Apps user consent flow. We're going to be using Auth 2.0 with Descope Inbound Apps for our authentication. Now that we finished the setup, let's write some code to implement the authentication. Note that all of the code is available in our AI repository under examples FastAPI MCP server. I'm going to go into my main and I'm going to import the token verifier, which we took from the FastAPI sample app that performs JOT validation for us in the backend. I'm going to initialize it in a variable called auth. Now this is optional, but I'm also protecting my API routes using the FastAPI security dependency. You may want to skip this if you don't want to protect your API routes and only want to protect your MCP route. I'm doing that for my second route as well. Now here is where we will actually protect our MCP server. I'm going to be using the FastAPI MCP's built-in parameter called authconfig, inside which we have a custom OAuth metadata block. Note that you can copy this code from our repository just make sure to replace the Descope API base URL and the Descope project ID in your actual environment variable file. This block contains all the necessary OpenID Connect endpoints from Descope, such as the issuer, the JOX URI, the authorization endpoint, etc. Finally, we're also going to add a dependency on the same auth object, which is our token verifier. That's it. Now we've got an MCP server, which is also protected with authentication. Let's run it and see what happens. If I try to connect to my server again here on cursor, notice that it prompts me that I need to log in. It doesn't allow me to access the tools without logging in. Let me go ahead and log in. It's going to redirect me back to cursor, and now we've got both the tools enabled. We can actually perform the same question again. And we get our result back. So in this video, we've seen how we can go from a basic FastAPI server, convert it into an MCP server, and then protect your MCP server with authentication using Descope.